a lot of what we say on our team is like, good enough is better than perfect. Good enough is better. Like, you have to move forward. There's never a perfect time to start a business. So you have to be comfortable with a little bit of imperfection here and there. The hardest part of any CEO's job, I think, is like every single day you have to push the pace. So they know what they do well, and they continue to refine that.
Welcome back to the Canadian Dream Podcast. Today, our episode is about accounting, entrepreneurship, and more. This episode is especially great if you are thinking about starting your own business here in Canada, or if maybe you already own a business, but now you are at that second big stage of your business journey, which is when you're trying to scale your business. We're going to talk a lot about numbers, but also about entrepreneurship and the challenges that any business owner faces. So stick around to learn more from Matt Tompkins. Matt, thank you for coming here.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Matt, I used to do this over and over, so many takes. Now I go, it's good. But
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's good.
Let's move on, yeah.
Isn't it important to know when good is good enough to keep moving instead of waiting for the perfect time to do things?
Yeah, and that's a good first question. In so many ways. Naturally, I'm a perfectionist. I think my background as a CPA, accountant, it's dollars and cents. It's like, if it's not perfect, it's not good enough, basically. But growing a business, starting anything, you won't be able to make any progress if perfection is the goal.
Yeah.
A lot of what we say on our team is like, good enough is better than perfect. Good enough is better. Like, you have to move forward, and you have to, there's never a good time to start a business. There's never a perfect time to start a business. So you have to be comfortable with a little bit of imperfection here and there in order to see kind of any progress. And it's something that I struggle with almost every day to this day.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I want to talk about, but let's start with you introducing yourself. So who is Matt Tompkins? I think you are going to do a better job introducing yourself than if I try and fail.
I'm a CPA by trade, and started a boutique accounting and fractional CFO firm called Elevate Financial Group about 4 years ago now. Did a lot of the traditional route, went through UBC, did an accounting degree, and then went to PwC, a big accounting firm, global accounting firm, cut my teeth there for a handful of years. And then during COVID, when things kind of got shaken up, had a realization that that's not really the path I wanted to go down. And so decided to take the risk in entrepreneurship and spin out my own firm.
Yeah.
So
I was telling you behind the scenes before we started recording this, for every crisis, there's an opportunity. And that's what also enabled you to change your career.
It's interesting. I had like a very typical track, you'd say. I mean, just even being brought up, it was like middle class, like right in the middle of middle class, basically. Great family, great parents, super supportive, but no entrepreneurs in my family, extended family to that matter. No one went to university as well, so I was kind of the first one to go down that track. But then once I got into it, went there because of baseball originally, and then was like, okay, I want a secure job, I want to make a lot of money, and I want a good pension, and somewhere that I can work for 30, 40 years. And that's kind of was like my one track mind, and was down that path. Went to PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, which is a huge accounting firm, great company, and was very much thinking I want to be a partner at this company. And that's a 10 to 15 year track. Huge upside once you get there. You can make a lot of money, but it's very grueling. It's a ton of hours. It's a lot of time commitment. And there's some signs that it wasn't maybe the path for me, seeing the other partners, the lack of time they had with their family. We had an ongoing joke that we called it the manager 15, like the freshman 15, where once people made manager positions, they'd gain 15 pounds because they didn't have to exercise.
I thought they had to work 15 hours.
No. Well, that too. And the travel.
Work 15 hours and you gain 15 pounds.
Yeah, you have no time to exercise. And the travel commitment, I was on the road 3 or 4 months a year.
Oh, really? Do accountants have to travel a lot?
Yeah. So in audit, we were to go to client sites.
Okay.
And yeah, there is one in Asia specifically. great experience, but just something I couldn't see myself doing long term. And I don't think I would have ever made the change if it wasn't for COVID, because COVID really, I mean, terrible situation for the world, for Canada. A lot of people obviously lost a lot of loved ones. But for myself, it's the first time I slowed down. And
for you and for Amazon, it was great, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For our stock portfolios. But it was the first time in 28 years that I stopped and slowed down. And I was kind of like, what do I actually want? And it wasn't that. It wasn't the prestige. It wasn't the 15-hour days. It wasn't
the pension plan.
No, I just was kind of like, I think I can do something more interesting, and like, life's short. I might as well just go for it. And so it was August 2020 when I kind of flipped that switch on.
And where did you spot this opportunity? Was it because you were just looking for a niche? Hey, I'm starting a business. Let me find a niche that needs my services. And here we go. Or is it because you could really relate to small business owners?
Good question. I think the main reason was we worked with a lot of really large clients. So like some were multi-billion-dollar clients.
You worked, right?
Yeah, worked at PwC with like very large organizations. And then definitely realized some of the smaller clients, small as in still probably doing $25-50 million a year in revenue, they'd get less attention. And then I was kind of like, well, who focuses on the $1 to $10 million businesses? Because that's the actual backbone of Canada, is small businesses doing around $1 to $10 million in revenue. And I realized that there actually wasn't many people helping them or supporting them. And if they were, it was a little stale and slow and lacking technology and lacking some energy. So I noticed that. But then also, I think sometimes when people want to start a business, they're like trying to find this niche, trying to find this product to sell. But I'm like, well, just look at your skill set. What do you have? And just go first, try and go do that. Like for me, I was like, well, I know how to do accounting, and I like talking to people and feel comfortable doing that, which is two kind of things that are unique combined, which become powerful. So like,
and accountants are not really good.
They're not known for that. Usually, yeah. So I was like, well, if I can sell my services and provide good services, I could probably be quite successful in that realm. And then just slowly started picking away, but I didn't have any expectations when I started. Honestly, the first 2 years, I was just kind of like a glorified consultant, I'd say. I was by myself, one person kind of included once in a while, an assistant here or there, just kind of contracting out work the odd time. But it wasn't until like a year and a half, 2 years ago where I was like, okay, I'm going to turn it on and turn on the jets a little bit and see how big I can build it and how quickly.
Okay, so now this conversation can go in different directions. Yeah. One is your personal journey, which is quite interesting because you also have an episode of burnout that I would love to touch on. Also, we can talk about your clients' challenges, which I think many people will resonate with. Like, okay, what are the main challenges that small business owners face? And what are the main mistakes that they are making? Regarding their accounting, how can you avoid an audit or being audited? These things. And we can also talk about other things that maybe newcomers could benefit from. You want to pick one of these three?
Well, I think the burnout and the client struggles kind of go hand in hand.
Okay, tell me about it.
So, I back up to August 2023. Last year, I had a moment where I was like, I'm done. Like I thought I was just gonna shut it all down.
So that was hold on. So that was 1 year ago. Your company is now 4 years old.
Yeah,
you have been growing substantially.
Yeah,
and now you are a team of over 10 people.
Yeah, right now we're a team of 13. At that point, we were a team of 6, maybe 7.
So 3 years in, what happened?
Yeah, I hit a bit of a breaking point where I look at it like the messy middle almost, where we weren't at scale enough where we could maybe hire really top talent in certain, or like we had a few really talented people, but like we probably needed a few others. Systems and processes were just chaotic. Bringing on the wrong clients that didn't fit our niche. So like we were chasing money. Like I would see a dollar sign, someone wants to pay us this much per month. Sure, we'll take them. but that client wasn't the right client to be working with. And just kind of everything snowballing at once. I was working crazy hours. So I just kind of mid-August, I was like, I need a break. Like I'm gonna totally crash and burn. And like, I just wanted to kind of give it all away. And my fiance, she asked, she's like, at that point, she's like, if someone offered you $1 million for the business right now, but you had to stay on for another year, would you do it? And I was like, no. Like I was willing to leave. Like I was like, I'm just done. Like someone could just take the business and I'll just go do something else. Because I was so sick of it. But took a week off, did a bunch of mountain biking and hiking in Whistler for the week with her, and then kind of just got more perspective on the business was a separate entity, and then it's me. And what happens day to day in that separate entity is not a reflection of who I am as a person. And that the speed of growth and like what's happening currently is like it was my decision. It's my doing. It's not happening to me necessarily. I decided to start the business. I decide to have all this growth happening. I can decide if we need to hire additional people. So a lot of it, I was like, it's in my control and it's like my playground. And I hired a coach at that point and she's been fantastic. And we call our Slack channel like Matt's playground. And I think a lot of people think businesses have to be structured the exact same. But that's just not true. We do a lot of things super weird and differently. But it fits us and it fits my personality and the way I envision things. And that burnout story with clients that we see, everyone goes through it. All small business owners, they've had a period where I feel like they're almost done. But the ones that get to the other side are now the ones that are seeing kind of the fruits of their labor pay off.
Yeah, you wrote an article that I read, and there was a quote there. I didn't write down who that quote is from, but I'm going to read it out loud here. Operating a small business feels like a daily knife fight where you get out of bed, try not to get stabbed, get back in bed, and do it all over again.
Yeah, that's probably Brent Beshore. And then a lot of people have re-quoted it.
So it's a knife fight.
And that's how I felt. Every morning I'd wake up, my alarm would go off at 5:30 or 6, and I'd be like, here we go. Mm-hmm. And you hear a lot of that in business of like, get the troops ready. It's like this military mindset, which in my opinion is just kind of silly because it's like, we're not going to war. We're just doing accounting. Like no one's dying. And one of the best piece of advice I ever got was from a partner at PwC, and I was super stressed, working long hours, and he looked at me and he's like, no one's going to die. Like, you're not a heart surgeon. This is not like, just go home and get some sleep. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to realize. But yeah, that quote, that's exactly how I felt in the moment. And I think everyone kind of goes through it because if you don't go through it, you won't learn it. It's hard to, like, I read all the books. I knew what I was supposed to do, quote unquote. But until I really went into the depths of that like burnout and like quasi depression, that's when I was like, okay, like I need to actually make a fundamental change if I want to keep doing this.
And so do you see yourself today as an accountant or as an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur. Yeah. I'm the first one to admit on our team, I'm probably one of the worst accountants on our team. Our bookkeepers are like fantastic, so strong. And then our CPAs on our team are like extremely bright, way better at the actual technical accounting than I am, and I lean on them a lot. So I look at my job more now as like leading, implementing culture, and then sales, a lot of it. So like continually focus on ways to grow the business.
And what are the main challenges that you are facing in those roles, leading the team?
The hardest part of any CEO's job, I think, is like every single day you have to push the pace, which is super challenging. So if I flash back to when I was employed, like I was a really good employee. I got, I got good ratings every year, was liked by managers, but to be totally transparent, there'd be some days where I'd go in and know I didn't have much work to do. And I'd maybe do an hour of work. And just kind of like, it's fine. Like I'll catch it up tomorrow. But when I'm now leading a company, it's like, I need to be there showing up with energy every day, leading with energy, and continually pushing that pace. And that's hard because sometimes I wake up, I'm tired. Even this morning, dog woke me up at 5 a.m. and I'm tired, and I was like, okay. And then getting onto my first call this morning at 8:30 and still like presenting myself, coming from a point of strength, and making sure everyone's knowing what they're doing for the day, and so we can kind of move forward. So it's sometimes exhausting, so it's making sure there's a good balance in there to make sure I don't go down that burnout path again.
Yeah, we're still talking about burning out, okay? Can you explain the story about the boulder that you can push uphill or it can just roll downhill?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people when they start a business, there's this meme or like photo of someone pushing a boulder up the hill. They're like, that's what entrepreneurship looks like. You're like basically like slowly pushing up this heavy boulder, and like you want to make sure it doesn't crush you, so you always need pressure on it. And I definitely felt that in years like 2 and 3. But then no one ever talks about when you get that boulder up and then things start working and that boulder starts running down the hill. And what I meant by that was like, when you're pushing it up, I was assisting with the copywriting on the website. I was thinking of ways we could market ourselves. I was like trying to like bring on new clients, bringing on, the first handful of employees, and it was super fun. Everything was new. Everything was like energetic, and it was just kind of like this chaotic like mess, but it was still like fun. But then once things started clicking and we get like these referrals come in and like more clients, more people, and this machine that I always thought I wanted starts kind of spinning. And I was like, oh, now I'm running away from this boulder and it's starting to like chase me down this hill. And I just felt like I couldn't keep up. Like email inbox was slammed, like everything, like calendar was full every day. And that's when I, wrote that article about the boulder, because I was like, no one ever talks about that. And everyone's always talking about the build up, but no one ever talks about like, well, when things start working, that's also a different problem. It's a good problem. I'm happy I had that problem, but it's still something that you need to work on and need to deal with. And I'm actually just reading a book right now that came out just a few days ago by an entrepreneur in Victoria, Andrew Wilkinson. He's got 40 different companies now and, $1 billion business, but his book is a lot about that.
What is the book about?
It's called Never Enough. And it's kind of
Never Enough.
Yeah, it's his chase for like wealth kind of. And I'm only halfway through, but it's fantastic. And it talks about him, kind of running away from that boulder downhill. But it was the first kind of time that I've heard someone speak about it and the different challenges that you encounter. Because when things are going well and from the outside looking in, it's like 7-figure business, yada, yada, yada. Like, oh, that must be nice. Like, get a lot of that. But it's like on the inside, it's like things are crazy and chaotic. And I'm just trying to keep my head above water.
Do you think that most people who have jobs, employees, no matter how hard they work, how many long hours they work, do you think they actually realize what it is like to own a business, to own a thriving business?
No, I don't. I unfortunately, because I thought I did. I thought I knew.
As when you're the boss, whenever you see the boss can drive the best car.
Yeah.
Can live in a nice house with their family. They can go on vacation 2-3 times a year. They can take the morning off whenever they want.
Yeah.
And you are there working for the boss and you think, oh, they are getting all the perks.
Yeah.
Right? But they do not realize that it is actually a lot of pressure that you don't get to handle.
Yeah. And the reason why I say I don't think people understand it is because I didn't understand it. Yeah. When I was working at,
me neither.
At PwC. And I would see people, I'm like, oh, like that's, I don't know, it looks pretty easy. Like, I understand the risk and like the pressure, but like, it can't be that bad. And then once I started my own, I was like, oh, it is so hard. And you see people who make it look easy, but it's because they've been doing it for 20 years. And they have really good people in place.
And they're waking up at 4 a.m.
Exactly, right? So you don't see what's going on behind the scenes. And I think that's a big one where it's like social media especially has, I think, ruined a bit of it. The private jets, the fancy dinners, the travel to Dubai, all this stuff. But I'm like, do they just have a really good credit card limit where they're spending all their money? Or is their business actually thriving? Like, I would say a lot of the former. But yeah, and I think sometimes if someone were to look at my day to day, they might be like, oh, Matt doesn't work that hard, or like, what does he do? I go for like a lot of walks. The majority of my days honestly spent like scribbling notes in a notebook, like sitting there thinking. But the reality is like I'm thinking about it all the time. And I think that's what people don't forget. It's not the typical output. It's not like no longer like, how can I explain it? Like if you're like, I'm not judged on like words per minute anymore or like output per minute. It's more like I'm judged on how the team's performing and like overall productivity and overall output. And that's a hard thing to get used to. Whereas like my time is no longer tied to the productivity. Sometimes I can make one good decision in a week or a month, and that's really all I had to do. But it's hard to get used to that when I'm so tied to that 40-hour work week, and like it's ingrained in our culture where it's like you have to be working between 9 and 5, and if you're not, then you're failing. Basically. But it's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, like you said, it's not about productivity, it's the responsibility that you have. I think many people who have a job, they're not every day thinking that, oh, I might get fired today. But as a business owner, no matter how you're thriving, I don't know if it's just me and a few people that I heard, podcasts, etc. But maybe you will tell me if it's the same with you. Well, you have now 13 people on your team. You have, 40 clients that depend on you. If you slack, all that can disappear.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And what I'm trying to remember and work on is like, I don't think that's true, but I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing, right? If I believe it to be true, then it.
I share this with my wife, and she goes, "Oh, what, do you really think so?" Yeah, I think it's all gonna collapse. And she, really? I never feel this way about your business. Yeah, but that's why it's going well.
Yeah,
because I can never relax.
I know, and that's one thing with my coach I'm working on a ton is like the fact that like, hey, this machine that has been built, it's sustainable. And of course, it still needs work every single day. But the way I'm trying to think about it now is like, if I don't give myself those mini breaks or those vacations, then in 2 years, it'll all be over. And I think the main thing of like any successful organization is like longevity. So if I can move my time horizon as opposed to looking at like monthly targets or annual targets, it's like, what do I want this to look like in a decade? Like in in 2034, it's like, what do I want Elevate Financial to look like in 2044, 20 years from now? Like pushing that time horizon out, because then the only way I'll get there is if I'm not burning myself out, constantly stressed, because either I won't make it or the business won't make it because I'll want to shut it down. And I just went on my first vacation basically in years at the end of May for 2 weeks, and it was the first time where I didn't really check. I checked email once, and it was awesome, and nothing bad happened. And it's like, and I think that's what we forget is like people, I'm not as important as sometimes I think. Like clients will be fine. Our team members are super bright and awesome. They're going to be great. They're going to be fine. So really at the end of the day, me being there nonstop every day, every minute is like not the key to success for our group.
Right. And what is the key to success for your group?
And there's 3 main things that really we're focusing on. It's like building and maintaining trust with our clients is a big one. And then growth is a second, like continually bringing on new clients and filling our pipeline. And then number 3 is like culture, basically. And the reason why those 3 kind of work together is like the building trust with our existing clients that leads us to referrals from them. And all of our clients, I love our clients. They're great people. They're a ton of fun. And so they're going to introduce us to other people who we want to work with, which is exactly what we want. Like our kind of what we look for a fit is just like people we want to work with. And then number 2, growth. I think businesses are often, I think they have to grow. I think if they don't grow, then it's really challenging to find talented people. Because if I were to tell, team members right now, like, hey, we're going to stay right here. Like, we're doing X amount in revenue. We have X clients. Growth is over. I know 3 would leave tomorrow. 3 people would just be like, I want to grow my career. I want to increase my salary over here. Like, I want some room for growth. And then lastly, the culture. It's like happy people, happy team members equals happy clients equals healthy profits, and have that flywheel spinning. So I think I spend a lot of time thinking about those 3 things and how we can continually improve them.
And what gives you most satisfaction in your business?
The team. At first, to be totally transparent, when I first started, it was the money. Like, to be totally honest, the first 2 years when it was just kind of myself and the odd contractor, I was just trying to make as much money as possible, and realized that didn't really make me that happy or move the needle too much. My life was still relatively the same. Some things were easier, but once it got to a certain point, I just didn't care as much.
Yeah.
But now, seeing a team member like bring in a client themselves, like win a sale, like launch a really cool project internally, have really good client feedback. We've gotten really good feedback, and then the client will email me and I'll forward it on to the team member being like, this is amazing. And that gives me a lot of pride, seeing them have fun and excel. And then seeing them also be able to like do things like buy their first car. Had a couple people do that. We've had, people move into new houses, and like that feels really good too. And being able to like, a part of me is like, it's fun paying people well, and seeing them benefit outside of work from that. And then providing them like a flexible, hopefully fun place to work. That like, we're still intense, we still work really hard, but we have like a very lax policy where it's like, as long as you're getting your work done, I don't really care where it's happening, how it's happening, what time it's happening. It just needs to get done. So we're not like focused on like hours or like output that way.
Especially nowadays when you can work from anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
yeah. So Matt, now let's talk about your clients or any business owners here in Canada. When is the right time? Although we already established that there's never a perfect time, but when should they stop doing all their accounting and bookkeeping by themselves and actually start looking for help? And why should they do it?
If you're doing over $500,000 a year in revenue, you probably want your bookkeeping done on a monthly basis. Making sure everything's up to date. That way you can see your monthly profit and loss. You can make decisions based on that information moving forward. And at that point, the transaction volume, that's a big one we look at. It's like, how many transactions are running through your checking account, your credit card each month? And at that point, it's probably pretty high, where as a business owner, you don't want to be focusing on categorizing items in QuickBooks. You don't want to be focusing on filing your GST on a monthly, quarterly basis, filing PST, all these things that go on behind the scenes, running payroll. So it's like, you can outsource that, free up your own time, where then you can focus on growth and driving your business forward. So that's kind of like the bare minimum, I would say, is like 500,000. And then in between $250,000 and $500,000 of revenue, I'd say at least quarterly, you want your books updated. You want everything kind of organized, again, to review your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, and be able to make decisions moving forward. Below that, we probably wouldn't work with any clients below the $250,000 range, just because at that point, I still think you want to be focused on like finding product market fit. I think you can do it annually. And I don't think the return on their investment would be there from working with someone like ourselves.
So it sounds like the main reason is to free up space.
Yes.
But I want to focus on the mistakes that business owners might be making and how getting help can help them avoid those mistakes. That's stage number 1.
Yeah.
Stage number 2 would be, how can you maximize your profits? And also, I am not a big fan of government.
Yeah.
So how can we not let the government take so much from your hard work? Let's put it this way. So stage number 1, the mistakes that you can avoid. What are the most common mistakes that you know that business owners make when they're not doing this in a professional manner?
Honestly, I think the most common mistakes are like they're not tracking anything. So like, and they're not like, they have no backup for their transactions in terms of like receipts or invoices. So that's probably the biggest one is like, you go out for a meal, say you and I go for dinner, it's a business expense. I don't grab the receipt, and then an audit happens and you're scrambling trying to find things. So I think that's the biggest one is just like organization is usually the biggest error we see is like, or lack of organization, I guess. And
bookkeeping.
Yeah. And that right there, that then stems up to like, well, GSTs can be really hard, and filing GST, your year-end tax filings can be really challenging. And then what we usually see with that lack of our organization is a lot of personal expenses flowing through the business, which makes it really challenging to decipher, is the business profitable? Are things going well? Because there's all these personal items in here as well. So it just becomes a little messy. So it's making sure, it's very basic. That's the thing, is like setting a strong foundation, making sure only business transactions are going through there, making sure all your receipts and invoices are attached to each transaction, which there's a ton of technology that helps us do that now. And then from there, with that kind of like build up, then it makes the monthly bookkeeping super smooth. And then when year-end tax filing comes, it's simple and it doesn't take that long. And then if you ever do get audited, it's no big deal. It's like, here's our information, here's all the support and backup. And the CRA is usually actually very easy to deal with, especially if you have solid documentation. And usually, very pleasant in that manner. But, and then what was the second?
Yeah, so the first one was avoiding mistakes. And then the second one is maximizing your profits.
Yeah, so I think step number one to maximizing your profits is understanding and being able to read an income statement or a profit and loss statement. What we focus mainly on is cash flow, because say you're an e-commerce business that sells like a coffee mug, right? And you look at your income statement and you'd be like, oh, we're making money this month. Maybe we have $20,000 in profit. But then you look at your bank account and you have $0. And people are always confused by that. They're like, why am I making money? Or it says I'm making money, but I have no cash. And it's because they're purchasing inventory, and inventory goes onto the balance sheet, for example, but does not show up in the income statement until you sell those items as cost of goods sold. So what we really try and focus on is like, even that was a mouthful, right? So we're trying to like walk our clients through and like really get them to understand the balance sheet and income statement and cash flow statement, how those items work together. And from there, once they start understanding that, then it's working into the, how do we drive profits? And the biggest one is like gross margin. It's like your selling price and the cost to sell your services or your product. So for any services organization, like we're an agency basically, very similar to a marketing agency, anything like that. And what I like to tell people is like, it's basically like the 50-30-20 rule, where it's like your gross margin has to be 50%. So say we make $100,000 per month, the cost to service that revenue has to be no greater than $50,000. So like the cost of all of our bookkeepers, accountants has to be, as no higher than $50,000. Then your cost of operations, subscriptions, administrative personnel, ops managers, my salary as well, because I'm not really like delivering client work, can be no greater than $30,000. And then you're left over with $20,000 of profit. So it's like focusing on that top kind of area of the income statement, the selling price, and then the cost to sell those services or product is so important, because what we sometimes see is like, people don't really understand how much it costs to really develop like a specific like item. Like say for example, this microphone, right? People are like, oh, we'll sell it for $20, but then it costs $17 to develop it. And then they forgot about the shipping costs and logistics. And all of a sudden they're selling it basically at a break even. But then they have, all their subscriptions for Gmail, Slack, all these items, and then they're at net loss and they're not even paying themselves. So it's really focusing on like your inputs and then like making sure you're covering your cost by a large margin to make sure you can survive. And what I tell people is like, there's nothing wrong with charging high prices as long as you're providing value, because that means you can stay in business for a long time.
Do you have any case study, maybe not mentioning the person's name or the business name, but any problem that you encountered and you were able to tell your client, hey, there's actually a better way to do this?
Yeah, like that happens a lot with inventory-based businesses. So people have to buy a lot of product. Oftentimes what we're looking at for them is, again, like the intangible items that pop up after the fact, like the shipping expenses. So what we did with one client, they sell high-end products. Basically, they were getting charged a ton for shipping, like unbelievable amounts. And then also like developing the product in Vancouver was like crazy expensive. We did a huge, a massive analysis on like doing it in-house internally, outside of Canada. So basically vertically integrating their company. So as opposed to paying all these different vendors, like to build one product, they'd pay probably 6 or 7 different vendors and then UPS. And so this product that maybe costs, $2,000 is being sold for $2,200, and the margin isn't great enough to pay for rent, pay for employees. So we looked at vertically integrating it. So doing everything in-house, and that has basically turned their business around for the better. They're always successful, always pretty solid, on solid ground, solid foundation. But since that kind of turning point, they've added 12% to their bottom line. So they're doing close to like 27% net margin now, which is fantastic.
Nice.
And that was just kind of looking at like all this money's flowing out to all these different vendors. Why can't we just keep it in-house? And that means, hiring people, developing systems internally, which took a year and a half, but now they're going to be recognized. They're going to be reaping those dividends for, decades, I think.
Matt, you're so young. You're only 32, 33?
32, yeah.
32, but you have a lot of experience inside so many businesses, right? I was going to say running, but kind of co-running, or at least as an insider, you have seen what so many businesses look like. Are there any common mistakes that you see business owners making that could be easily avoided if they had some understanding of accounting like you do?
I love this position, being able to see inside the brains of so many entrepreneurs, and like we work with like some brilliant clients and like awesome people. And I would say there's 4 or 5 who take it to a whole different level in terms of how they operate, the culture at their business, and then also the money they're earning for the business, how much they pay their people, and then also how much they're reaping themselves.
Since they started working with you, you mean?
Not necessarily just working with us, just like since that progression that we've seen.
So they have grown a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say the number one thing, or like the reason why, is they don't get distracted. So they know what they do well, and they continue to refine that. And whenever they've gone off base, it's always like, we're going to shift our focus back to what we do best. So like one client in particular, it's like what they do best is provide an unbelievable customer experience and have the best product in Vancouver for what they sell. And they got distracted. It's like the flashy objects syndrome. You're kind of like, let's test that. Let's test this. And they tried a few things, but now they're back to their bread and butter, and they're having the best year ever. And it happened with another client where, you test a few things, but then it's like, no, just go back to what you do best. And that's what, after seeing that, that's what I try and come back to all the time, is like, we're just trying to do one thing, and it's provide exceptional service for our clients and we're easy to deal with. We don't use jargon. We're not stuffy accountants. Like, that's all we do. And it's simple, and keep it simple. And I think the ones who have kept it simple, focused on their main drivers, are the ones who are just so far above and beyond right now, and will continue to compound that growth over the next handful of years. So,
great. Focus.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because
it is so hard.
And once your time gets freed up too, I think like for a lot of these owners, they're used to working 50, 60 hours a week, say. Then the business starts working. They start being able to take a step back a little bit. Some of them are maybe working 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, and then they're like,
they have new ideas.
They have new ideas, exactly. And it's hard. Like, I mean, I get it. Like sometimes I had an idea the other night of like, a secondary business that could launch and like provide the seed capital for. And I was like, well, I could just like put in, maybe $20,000 into this thing, hire someone, they can run it. But the reality is like, it still takes up brain power. It still takes up like mental space, And that's the biggest thing is like people don't, maybe it doesn't take up like actual physical, like being there, doing something, but it takes up just like up here, which is hard.
You know, there's a reason you have background in sports, so have I. And we learn so much by training and competing, especially when we are young. And, you know, there's a reason why you don't see gold, silver, and bronze medalists in the Olympics or in the World Championships competing in two totally different types of sports.
Great point.
Right? There's no volleyball player and basketball player.
Yeah.
Right? Or soccer player and swimmer. It doesn't happen. The best ones, they are hyper focused.
Yeah.
Because it takes so much. I actually think that for you, in order to be, you know, the top 10% of anything, it takes you a lot of energy, of resources, time, etc. But for you to be in the top 1%, it takes everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And it takes it like a lot of longevity too, right? Like you can be maybe the best for a week, a month, a year even, but can you be up there for 20 years? Like I think of, I mean, honestly, one of the best examples is of like professionalism, grace, and like just like sportsmen is like LeBron James. People love him or hate him, but he's been there for 20 years. He's never been in the media in a negative manner. He's raised what looks like a great family. Now he's playing with his son. He's done all the little things right. People always made fun of him because he never partied when he was younger. But it's like, well, he's had this 20-year career now, and he's been able to just continually compound that. And like, maybe he was, I mean, he never had the greatest season of all time, right? Like other guys had like better seasons in terms of points, rebounds, assists, but no one's strung together 20 seasons like he did. And I think that's what I try and think about, and that's like what I thought about sports as well. It's like, I don't need to be the best once. I want to try and just be good enough and consistent
forever,
every day. And that's much easier than trying to be amazing. So Warren Buffett's, I think, 92 right now, worth $200 billion, whatever. But he's made 96% of his wealth after his 60th birthday. So that snowball effect, like he was rich, obviously, when he was in his 40s and 50s, but it just started snowballing at a completely ludicrous rate in his 60s, 70s, 80s, and now into his 90s. And someone who, you know, drinks Coca-Cola all the time, has his McDonald's breakfast, still thriving, still mentally extremely sharp. And I think it has a lot to do with like, he's not too stressed. He was in it for the long haul all the way along and wasn't looking for the big overnight win or the big like annual win. He was looking to buy businesses that would thrive for 30 or 40, 50 years. And I think it's a great way to look at people's own business is like, how can I let this thrive for 30 years? And maybe you don't want to run it for 30 years, but still having that mindset, I think it pushes people in the right direction to make different decisions as opposed to making decisions for the day or for the week or for the month. It's like, make the decision for a decade. So if I'm making a decision today, it's like, okay, how will this impact us from 10 years from now? If the answer is it won't matter at all, well, then just make the decision and move on. Or if it's a bigger decision, it's like, okay, well, maybe I would actually make it different as opposed to looking how it will just impact our bottom line this month. So
I want to talk about your Canadian dream, what your plans are for the future, but I'm just thinking here, I'm forgetting two things. One is, what piece of advice would you give to anybody, newcomer or born in Canada, who is thinking about starting their business in Canada? From your perspective as an accountant and as an insider who has had access to so many different types of businesses.
I'd say whether newcomer or just someone starting, it's like, look at your skill set, look at what you do well. So what I did, I was like, well, I'm pretty good at accounting. And I like talking to people. I'm good at building relationships. So that kind of morphs itself into like, well, I can maybe grow an accounting firm. So if someone has a skill set like copywriting or website building, it's like, just start pitching your services to different people. And, you know, email is not dead. I think cold email people you're interested in speaking with, have value to offer them, but it just comes down to shooting your shot. And I hate that term kind of, but it's true. It's like you have to put yourself out there. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to face rejection. But it's really the only way to get in front of the right people. So that's number one. Number two is like use the platforms. It's something that like I wish I did more of. But like Twitter, LinkedIn, or X, I guess, LinkedIn, Instagram. If you're a great designer, showcase your skill set. Just post stuff online. Someone's gonna notice it. If you're a really good writer, post an article online. Because if you're not doing that and you're trying to tell people you're a good writer, then are you? Because you're not writing. Or if you want to be a writer, then just write. Or if you want to be a designer or be a developer, then just do that and showcase your skills. And you'll be like, it's surprising. Like people do reach out. I started posting. I post on LinkedIn once in a while, and it's powerful because people are interested. And even if you don't think they are, I never thought anyone would be interested in what I have to say. But sometimes it resonates with like people that you'd have no idea it resonates with. And that can be your ticket into like your first sale. And once you get that first sale, that first taste of like, oh, wow, someone's paying me for something that I'm doing and it's independent. For me, it was like a drug, and it gets you excited. And then that's the motivation you need to continue doing it and kind of continue pushing forward.
One, don't be afraid of rejection.
Yeah.
Number two, just use your platforms and create content and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
They're basically almost the same thing.
Yeah, more or less the same.
What mistake should they try to avoid?
Jumping around too much. If you look at the trains in Helsinki, all the trains start in the same path. They all go the same path. And then it isn't until like a certain point where they start branching off. People don't stay on the train long enough to find their path. So I think people start and then like, this isn't working, and then start again. And all they're doing is like going back to the beginning. But you need to stay with something long enough to actually find your unique path. Like I could have just quit accounting because I was like, I don't know if I love it long term. But I'm happy I just stayed with it. And then I was like, oh, this different path of like maybe starting my own thing. And then now I'm like, oh, I love this. This is fantastic for the most part. And so I think it comes down to just, sticking with things longer. And it's hard right now with, again, social media. It's just like everything. Everyone's looking for quick wins. But stay on the train, and then things will start branching out and opening up for you.
For you personally, what is your end goal? Where do you see yourself and your company in 10, 20 years?
I would like to become like a premier one-stop shop for all things like accounting, finance, and consulting engagements in Canada. And I think we can get there. And I don't really necessarily have like revenue goals, or like I don't have an exit plan in terms of like I want to sell the company or anything. But it's building something that like I'm proud of, and I can work with really fun people and we can do cool things. That's like the main thing, is I just want to continue to be profitable, sustainable, work with amazing clients, do it with people I like. And I think good things will happen from that.
Great. What does the Canadian dream look like for you?
Healthy family, lots of time with my fiance, with friends, and family as well. And a lot of that comes down to like having something that I like doing every day that supports myself, my family, and the things that I like to do. And if I can kind of join all those forces together, relationships, health and wellness, and, the economic side of things, then I think that is a Canadian dream for everyone. And it's a great place to do it. I sometimes beat up on Vancouver in terms of the cost of living and so on and so forth, but
we all do.
But at the and of the day, it's like I'm choosing to live here. I could move somewhere else if I want to. So I might as well make the best of it. And if we look outside today, it's a beautiful day. Yeah. It's amazing here. So we're lucky. We're very lucky to be here. And I think that's one thing we forget.
We are lucky. Matt, thank you so much. Now, where can people find you, and what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think LinkedIn's probably where I'm most active. Working on Twitter.
Where we met.
Yeah, that's where we met. Twitter's, I'm on there once in a while, but LinkedIn's definitely number one. People can just shoot me a message there and get in touch that way. But I'd say that's the
Okay.
one and only source.
We're going to put that in the description
Yeah.
for this video or this audio episode. If you're watching it on YouTube, it's a video. If you're watching it on Spotify, it's a video too, or audio. And on Apple Podcasts, it's just audio. So we have the link for your LinkedIn and also for your website, for your company's website. What's the name of your company again?
Elevate Financial.
Elevate Financial.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was super fun.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for sticking with us until the end of this episode. And remember, if you liked it and if you think that anybody else could get inspired with this episode, what are you going to do? Yes, you're going to like it and you're going to share it with that person. And remember to subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.